Welcome to the fifth pillar of emphasis. My name's Dan, and this is a brief introduction to House Bill 4350 and its impact on the U.S. government's ongoing UFO investigation. This bill was introduced on July 2nd and more recently reported with amendments, which does come into play later on September 10th. You can download a copy of it at congress.gov. And while you're there, make sure you also check out Senate Bill 2610 because they'll also influence the investigation going forward. H.R. 4350 is the National Defense Authorization Act of 2022. But from here on out, we'll refer to it as the NDAA. Senate Bill 2610 is known as the Intelligence Authorization Act of 2022, which is how Congress prioritizes how they want tax dollars spent in regards to intelligence and intelligence-related activities in the United States government. While the NDAA is how Congress prioritizes the budget for military activities of the Department of Defense. And the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Kathleen Hicks, is responsible for the management of that DoD budget. One of the most impactful actions in the NDAA is Section D, which terminates the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, which means the only product the UAP Task Force produced was the preliminary assessment on unidentified aerial phenomena, which was provided by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which is led by the current DNI Avril Haines. This preliminary assessment was released on June 25, 2021. On the same day, this memo was distributed to DoD leadership, directing them to formalize the mission that was being performed by the UAP Task Force. This memo was signed by none other than Deputy Secretary Hicks. The NDAA proceeds to establish an office to address unidentified aerial phenomena. This will officially replace the temporary task force with a long-term enduring capability that Lou Elizondo has been asking for. And Chris Mellon suggests the new UAP office should be named the Office of Strategic Anomaly Resolution due to the fact that UAPs are seen not only in our skies but underwater and in orbit as well. This nomenclature is also justified because of the fourth observables that UAPs display, transmedium travel. Whatever the name is, the office will be established within the Office of the Secretary of Defense, which is located here on the DoD org chart, and which currently reports to Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. And guess who's the lead in the Office of the SecDef? None other than Deputy Secretary Kathleen Hicks. You know, from the Hicks memo? And the UAP office will have some interesting company, including the Defense Information Systems Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Section B, duties of the UAP office shall include the following. 1. Develop procedures to synchronize the collection, reporting, and analysis of UAP incidents. Language that is almost verbatim from the Hicks memo. 2. Report UAP incidents from each military department into a centralized repository. 3. Report UAP incidents in a consistent and timely manner, which, according to the Hicks memo, would be within 2 weeks of an occurrence. 4. Evaluate links between UAP and U.S. adversaries, which also coincides with one of the potential explanations called out in the UAP Task Force preliminary assessment. 5. Evaluate the threat UAP incidents present to the U.S., since, according to the UAP report itself, they clearly pose a safety of flight issue and may pose a potential challenge to U.S. national security. 6. Coordinate with other departments and agencies. Looking at you, NASA. 7. Coordinate with allies to better assess the nature and extent of UAPs. I would expect the 5, 9, and 14 eyes to be the first countries the U.S. reaches out to, but I wouldn't be surprised if the UN isn't far behind. And this duty also just happens to align with the third pillar of emphasis that Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon have been attempting to implement, international engagement. Quick side note, if you're wondering why my channel is called the fifth pillar of emphasis, here's a pretty big hint. Section C of the NDAA, Annual Reports, which will be required by the end of every calendar year from 2022 to 2026. Compare this to the Senate version of the bill, which would require quarterly reports. So if both bills are passed, they will have to work out this discrepancy. Until then, the NDAA requires the annual report to be submitted to the appropriate congressional committees. Committees which are defined in the definition section of the NDAA are as follows for the House of Representatives. The House Armed Services Committee, which has 59 members and includes Ruben Gallego, who is responsible for submitting the UAP amendment in the NDAA. The Committee on Foreign Affairs, which includes 51 members of the House of Representatives, including Tim Burchett, who I had the honor of interviewing during the Big Phone Home 2, all because I wrote him a letter supporting his effort on UAP disclosure, so go check out this interview. And I'd like to take a moment to encourage you to find your local representatives on any of these committees and call or write them and voice your support for this issue. My interview with Tim Burchett is proof that they are listening. The Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence that consists of 23 members, including Representative Andre Carson of Indiana, who has appeared on Face the Nation asking for congressional hearings on UFO sightings. The following Senate committees are also to receive the annual UAP reports. The Senate Committee on Armed Services, which is comprised of 26 members, but previously included the current NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, who has been publicly asking NASA scientists to begin investigating UFOs. The Committee on Foreign Relations, with its 22 members, including former presidential runner-up Mitt Romney, who has been on CNN speaking seriously about UFOs. And finally, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence that is made up of 16 members and chaired by Marco Rubio and Mark Warner, who have been all over the place talking about UFOs. So what's required to be in the report? A. Analysis of data and intelligence received through UAP reports. B. Analysis of UAP data collected through geospatial intelligence defined here by the Office of the DNI, signals intelligence, human intelligence, measurement and signal intelligence. C. The number of reported incidents of UAPs over restricted airspace, which included 143 reports in just over a year and a half according to the UAP preliminary assessment. D. An analysis of those events. E. Identification of potential threats posed by UAPs, and if you don't like the term threat, here are some equally valid terms. F. An assessment of UAP activity that can be attributed to foreign adversaries. G. Identification of patterns related to UAPs that indicate potential breakthrough aerospace capabilities by foreign adversaries. And the UAP Preliminary Task Force agrees that some potential patterns do emerge. H. An update on U.S. and ally efforts to track, understand, and address UAPs. This is where it gets really interesting. Section I. An update on any efforts underway on the ability to capture or exploit discovered unidentified aerial phenomena, which Lou Elizondo has alluded to on a news segment as referenced in this recent interview. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but this is also something that Bob Lazar mentioned during his Joe Rogan interview, where he mentions being told that one of the UFOs he was working on was discovered in an archaeological dig. J. An assessment of health-related effects for individuals that have encountered UAPs. In other words, the sixth observable of UAPs, biological effects. These biological effects have been known for decades and were even featured in Steven Spielberg's 1977 classic, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And the U.S. government even awarded full disability to John Burroughs in 2015 due to his exposure to a UFO in the infamous Rendlesham Forest event. If you want to learn more about biological effects and injuries related to the phenomenon, make sure you check out this article about it on the Silver Record. And that's it. That's the summary of the HR 4350. I hope you like, share, subscribe, and contact your elected officials. Thanks for watching.